And now down to the reason that you all came. When I grew up in Bailey's Harbor, one thing you knew about Pat Tischler was that he built houses. And everybody always said they were really good houses. As a child, I didn't think too much about those things, but as I knew him as an adult, I learned to really enjoy his company. And he shared his notebook with me one time of all the places he's built. And I was just amazed. I had a girlfriend in high school whose parents had him build a house. This would have been maybe around 1960. And their biggest complaint about that house was that the kitchen drawers were so precisely fitted that when the weather changed, it was hard to push them in and out. So he had to come and make them a little less precise, so that they would move more easily. So I think that says something about him as a craftsman. His son, Tim, Dr. Tischler, I guess we're supposed to call him, has agreed after an incredible amount of harassment. He finally said, okay, I'll do it. And I think he's kind of jumped in, heels up, and I think he's got a wonderful... Okay,
Tim,
that's
turn
all
it
right. I'll just talk louder. From talking to him, I think he's put together an incredible program for you, and you will get to see the amazing range of Tischler-built houses that includes Tim's grandfather, his father, his brothers, and also his nephew. Right? Okay, here's Tim.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? So, for a couple of years, Christy and Leanne kept pestering might be a little bit of a harsh word, asking, encouraging me, until last year, I'm walking my dog down 57 and going past Christy's house, and here comes Christy running out, bare feet, runs out to the street. I had to say yes. So, and I had been thinking about it for a while. I understand. I understand. And there's some people in the audience tonight that he built houses for. So, so my grandfather started building houses, and then my father and my two brothers, and now my nephew Matt, my brother Charlie Jumbo's in the audience tonight, and so is my nephew Matt. So we'll start out right here. Tischler usually has a C in it, but my grandfather took the C out because everybody was misspelling it. Now everybody sort of wants to put the C back in. I almost wish it had the C back in it. But Tischler means carpenter or joiner in German. And my great-grandparents, William Sr. and Augusta, immigrated from Germany in 1983 and came to Egg Harbor and built the farm, which is now Birch Creek Farm, and lived there. They actually had 9 children. 2 died in infancy in Germany, but 7 others. The 2 youngest were Hannah Pruder, who lived in Bailey's Harbor across from Keno Service Station in a house that my grandfather built, and then my grandfather was the youngest. And he was William Jr. Well, I really don't have a good picture of my grandfather. Looking at this picture, though, I see a resemblance. I've got a cousin that looks very similar, tall, receding hairline. Well, that's sort of Tischler trait, receding hairline. He served in the First World War, and after he came back to Door County, he actually went up to the UP and spent several years up there logging. And after that, then he came back and started working for Frank Oldenburg, who everybody's heard the name Frank Oldenburg, built a lot of houses down in Chapel Lane, Bailey's Harbor area. And then after several years, he went on his own and started building some of his own houses. And when he first, well, that's just his papers when he was discharged from the war in 1919, March 31st, 1919. One of the first houses that he built, and this house is still standing, actually I just took these pictures a few days ago, is on 57 on the east side of Kangaroo Lake for the Seeker family. William Seeker was a attorney from Madison. It's still owned by his family. A bunch of siblings own it. And it's not even on a foundation. I think it's sitting on blocks. You can see the rustic look with the shutters and everything. And I remember as a child going down there, my dad used to, and I think my brother did too, they had a pier there. We used to put it out in the spring and take it out in the fall. Just a summer cottage. And then they had a little guest cottage too, just to the north. I think their lot is a double lot. They actually have a pretty wide piece of property there. It's currently how it looks, but that's the Pruder house, which is right next to the house where my grandparents lived, which is now owned by Christy and Caleb. And he built that for his sister Hannah and his brother-in-law Carl and Hannah Pruder. Carl had, along with his brother, had the service station across the street where Keno's is. They also had a sawmill there that burned down. He also built the house for Arnold Visti. I wish I had a picture of how it was built, but this is how it looks now. John Newton owns it, and he's done a very wonderful job of restoring it and adding on to it and making it look real nice, the canopies and whatnot, but that was another house that he built for Arnold. He built the original Heald house, which I think has had some additions since. I look at it and I think it was probably just this plain, simple house. The garage probably wasn't there either. It probably was added in later years too. That's right across the street from where Ridges Road ends. If you stopped at Ridges Road, if you didn't stop at Ridges Road stop sign, you'd run right into that house. Hopefully you do stop though. This house is sort of at the south end of town, the Fritz house. It's right next to the motel. And again, it's just a very simple square house. I'm guessing this little room that's bumped out was probably built in later years. You can see the Door County fieldstone fireplace, which a lot of these have. He built it for the Fritzes. It's now owned by their daughter, Arlene. Fritzes had a amusement park down in Melrose Park. Was called Kittyland. Just closed probably about 5 years ago. And they actually were good friends. I'm told they were good friends of my grandparents. This is the Carlsons, who are in the audience tonight, their garage. Their house was actually built by Frank Oldenburg, and my grandfather helped on it, but then my grandfather, I guess, built the log garage that they have, which is about 5 feet from the road. Hard to get in and out of a little bit. And a lot of these older houses, at the time, they were building log houses. And you'll see over time here how things sort of change. House of Seven Gables is out at the end of Chapel Lane, a few hundred yards from here. I was told my grandfather built it. My dad said that. My uncle said that. Some people thought maybe not. If you look, there's sort of an addition. The original house, I went down there and looked at it. The original house has got like a stone foundation, and this is more of a poured concrete, so it was added in later years. I looked at the boathouse. That probably was built in later years as well. And the garage looks to be about the same vintage as this original house, so I'm guessing he probably built the garage too, just a single one-stall garage, real close to Chapel Lane too. He built the dining room at Schmidt's Gazebo, and my brother the other day reminded me about this. I had forgotten about it, didn't know about it. So I stole some pictures on the internet. Actually, Leanne gave me the one picture of the view. And I'm guessing that this building here is from when it was the Coast Guard boathouse, maybe. There were some cottages there. He did not build the cottages, but he built that, and I believe it was open around 1935. And then he was good friends with George. George was the George Schmitz, George and Irene. He built it for them, and George would come up every weekend, and my brother said that he would bring up a case of Schlitz beer and drop it off my grandfather's. Evidently, Schlitz were relatives of the Schmitz. Schmitz and Schlitz. It's a tongue twister. And He brought up a table saw and jointer, which my nephew still has to this day. He brought up in the back of his car from Milwaukee for my grandfather. I don't know if my grandfather paid him for it or if he brought it up as a gift, but something that he used and my dad used and my brother, and now Matt even still has it. This house everybody probably recognizes, it's been for sale, it's still for sale. If anybody's interested, or did it sell? I heard a rumor it sold, now I backed it up, okay. Well, good. After my father passed away, we were cleaning out the house, and it was sort of a long process, and up in the attic we have a knee wall, and I didn't really want to crawl down there being almost 6'2", so I shined a flashlight down and I could see this box down there, so I thought, well, I got to go down there and lug this box out. This box weighed like 50 pounds, and in it I found all the stuff from when he built this house, all the blueprints, which I brought over there, all his contracts with his subcontractors, what he paid the subcontractors. House was built for nothing. They're asking way too much. They asked way too much for it. He even had waiver of liens for the subcontractors, which I thought back in the 1930s was unheard of. So it was very interesting. And I was told that there was an original house there that was, part of it was taking out to Kangaroo Lake where they had the lodge. So those are the houses that I have pictures of that my grandfather built. Some of the other buildings that I know that I've been told that he built from talking to people, relatives. He built several of the small buildings out of Tough Point. He also built a building out of Moonlight Bay, which I believe is the clubhouse or gathering house for Moonlight Bay Estates now, for a judge at one time. And he built several other cottages out of Kangaroo Lake, which I sort of have lost leads on. I believe he built, are the Coles here, Roy and Joe? I believe he built that house too that you're in, the original small little structure.
That's right. I think he did some of the additions too.
And possibly, that house has been added on to.
10 times.
Oh, at least. And the original Spikehorn Lodge. He built that, yeah, for the Augustines.
Really?
Yeah, because they were relatives, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are just some of the houses they built. Most of the houses that he built were in Bailey's Harbor. He did build a house in Sturgeon Bay for my grandmother's sister and brother-in-law. But otherwise, all the rest were basically in Bailey's Harbor. That Seeker house that I showed in the beginning there, he was living in Bailey's Harbor at the time. He did not have a car. He would walk out there every day, 2 miles, wherever it was, out to that spot, and walk back at night and worked out there. So just a sign of how the times have changed. Then in 1941, and he was building a house in Kangaroo Lake, and my dad was working with him. My dad was 19 at the time. My dad graduated from high school when he was 17. The story goes that my grandmother got sick of him causing trouble at home, so she sent him to first grade at 5. So my grandfather took ill, he had a heart attack, passed away, and the people that were building the house asked my dad to finish it. And my dad's like, well, I don't really know if I can. I've only been doing this a little bit. I've been working with them. They said, sure, they encouraged him, and he decided to take it on. And following the rest of the slides many of the rest of the slides I have are for the houses that he built, along with Jumbo and my brother Jim. And he built the houses over the course of 50 years. Now this is the only house I'm not certain of. It's either this house or one of the next houses that he built first. I was told it was this house, but my brother thinks it's a different house. But this is a house that he built out on the east side of Kangaroo Lake, down on 57 there. My brother thought possibly it was this house. He built these 2 cottages. One's been updated, one hasn't, but they're both down in that similar vicinity south of Maxwell and Braes on 57. Kitty McNeely House on Frogtown Road, right before you get to the corner. Still a very simple four-wall house. This house used to be, actually, it was a very small house he built down on Ridges Road. It's now up on Solitude Lane, Harbor Highlands. They use it for like the pool house. It was moved up there in later years, which was common. Nobody tore down houses, they moved things. There's a bunch of houses in here that were moved. You didn't tear things down, you moved it and used it someplace else.
Jeff, that road, is that Reverend's Road?
Yes. He built the Melvin House on East Kangaroo Lake Road, sort of down near Anschutz's. You can tell it's on blocks, no foundation. And then later years, Jim and Jumbo, and he built the garage just many years later. All the houses that I've got a list of all the houses they built and the numbers. I'm including like garages and other structures too. This house looks nothing like this today. He built this for Kenny Zock's brother. I forget his first name. What was his first name, Jumbo? Raymond Zock? Yeah. Rayfield. It's on Bluff Road as you're going up the road now. It used to be Jim Hickey's the mail carrier for years, and now it's like a yellow, they've added onto it. It's a rental house. And I think they added this, area here on later. I think the original house was a simple house. Many of these houses that he built were just simple 4-wall houses. They might have had a little simple upstairs. This house, I don't have a better picture of it. I apologize. A lot of these pictures I didn't have. I got them from the book that a gentleman made for my father after he retired, and I made them digital by taking pictures of them. This was for the Leanders on Ridges Road. It's no longer there. It's now, I believe, owned by the Ridges, the property where it stood. It's not on the lake side, it's on the opposite side of the road. And I remember Mrs. Leander. I don't remember him. He passed away long before I was born. This house is on 57. It's actually right next door to our house. And this house had it's all stone. I was talking to my brother, it probably was done by Kenny Zock's father-in-law, Ferdinand Jorns. And this house is right across the street. This house was actually another house that was moved. About half of that was an original house that was up, somewhere up toward the ball field on Summit Road. I don't know exactly. I was talking to Red Burnell's son, Father Burnell, and he said that they moved it down there, and then he and our father added onto it and increased its size. So it's still a very small house. And this is our house, or my house I grew up in, house I currently live in. Just was a simple Cape Cod with 2 dormers, and it's been added onto multiple times. I think it's had four additions onto it, so it's changed the roof line and everything else. He also built the original garage, which has now been moved, but this is the second garage. And that's my father standing there. This house is on 57. He built for a Meyer. Jumbo and Rosemary lived there for 30-some years. 40 years? 35 years. I thought it was longer than that. 35 years they lived there. And that one's currently on the market, so if you're looking to buy a house, that was Tischler built, $175,000. This Miller house he built, it's down on the corner of Meadow and 57 on the northeast corner. It's Donna Brown, the artist. Yeah, and that was the chicken house. So evidently they raised, Millers raised chickens. And I'm assuming, Ed, they're probably relatives of yours. Where's Ed? Yeah. He never got around to raising chickens.
He sailed on the Great Lakes. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's your neighbor.
Yeah.
You're right down the street. Yeah, well, there's some Millers and there's some Muellers, but they're all related because they're all like within a mile there. Ralph Stromberg, house on Kangaroo Lake, West Kangaroo Lake Road. Still looks the same. I was just by there the other day. Ralph had a bunch of siblings, and I believe they were the ones that owned the island for a number of years. And I don't know what business Ralph was in. I believe he was from Chicago. But he had a big pontoon boat back in the 60s, early 70s. Kangaroo Queen. And he would have chicken dinners on Sunday afternoons. And there's still on that property, there's still like the lift station or something there from it. The boat's long gone, I believe. So. Vesta just died, yeah, last year. Yeah. And her daughter was living there and she passed away too. Yeah. Technically, this isn't in Bailey's Harbor. Across the street's Bailey's Harbor, but I thought it was sort of unique. This he built for Alfred Franke, Toby Franke's father, the original barn structure. And I don't know how he did that. He had to have some help from multiple people. He had, different people work for him over the years, besides my brothers, because he worked for a number of years before my brothers were old enough to help, although Jumbo was telling me that he helped in some of these houses when he was in high school doing things. Ridges Road, I don't really know anything about this house. He built a house and a garage. And again, these were 25 years ago. I don't know what it looks like today, or even exactly what house it is. And he built the 3 cottages for Charlie and Mary Collins on Ward Street, sort of south of Lutheran Church, sort of behind gas station. 3 little simple cottages. They got stone foundations. That one's out of focus. There's another one. Stone steps. And I'm glad that I have these pictures, because right now a couple of those look worse shaped, tougher shaped than in these pictures even. This house was down on Ridges Road as well, and I believe that they took the picture in 1990. It was tore down the year before. The way this book that I have over there was brought about was my dad retired in 89 or 90. He was sort of going through some depression. He really loved the work, and the person who he built the last house for, Tank Shalom, said, "Pat, how about we go around and take pictures of your old house that you built, and I'll make you a book." So they went out and they took a bunch of pictures, and it was over the course of several years that he got all these pictures. But this house was gone, and I remember that house. When I was a kid, I used to mow the lawn there for the lady that owned it. I don't know if the garages are still in that structure or not. I never could figure out why it had 2 garages and not 1 double garage, 2 single garages.
They're still there.
They are still there? They're going to be probably torn down in the near future. I heard there's a...
Somebody needs to mow the lawn.
Well, I know who owns it. I'm told there's going to be a big log cabin built there. He's dealing with wetland issues right now. He also built the original Parent Motel, which is now Sunset Motel, north of town. And this picture I just took in the last week. Simple 4, maybe 5 rooms. And he built 4 of the cottages. I believe there's 6 cottages, or 6 or 7 cottages there. He built 2 cottages down below the hill, and then he built 2 more up above the hill. And these you can sort of see, things are changing. It's, more recent. There's stone block foundation. There's no longer stones for the foundation with mortar in between. Carl Miller, another relative. Quarter mile from your house? Yeah, on Grove Road. Carl was a plumber, worked for Anschutz Plumbing for a number of years. Finley Cottages, they're on East Kangaroo Lake on 57, sort of just past Bernowski's. Long driveway going down in. My brother reminded me, and I had totally forgotten about this, when our brother Jim was first married, he actually lived in one of these cottages. He rented it from the owners. Did you know that, Matt? I remember that was a long driveway, and your dad had an Oldsmobile Cutlass. And I remember getting that thing up that hill was a chore, because it was rear-wheel drive, and he was spinning all the way up there. A lot of shoveling. I was pretty little then. This house is out in North Bay on Sunset.
Is that on the corner of Sunset?
Where is this exactly, Jumbo? Sunset and what?
Well, it's on Sunset Drive, there's kind of a corner.
Yeah, Birch.
Birch and Sunset, thank you.
It looks quite different, yeah.
Oh, actually, it's Birch, not Sunset. That's wrong, it's Birch.
And Sunset.
Oh, Birch and Sunset, okay. Then he built a number of houses on West Kangaroo Lake Road. This is from Checkers. He built a house, and then he built a garage, and there's a breezeway over to the garage. And actually, John Checker recently reached out to Leanne, because he was in town a couple weeks, probably 3-4 weeks ago, and he went into the town hall to use the restroom, and he saw the sign up for the presentation that was going to be tonight, and wanted to know if he could get a DVD of it. So he comes up here occasionally. He stopped in and visited Jumbo a couple years, last year. He looked up where Jumbo lived because he moved. Breckenfeld House. Yeah, that's another house that's actually 2 doors down from us. There's 4 houses like right there. There's 3 houses on our side of the street, and then the one house across the street. Yeah, that's had a lot of work done on it. I know Susie, your husband did some work there. I didn't see you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Mary.
A lot of work's been done since then, too. Inside.
Well, this picture's 25 years old,
Yeah.
so
Outside looks
24. This house is on 57. It doesn't really look quite like this anymore. It's been updated. It's owned by the Johnsons. Mary Ann Johnson. Oh, there we go. This is how it used to look. I don't know if it looked like that when you bought it. But anyhow, he built the original ranch there. And it's a nice long piece of property. It goes all the way from 57 down to the lake, as many of those houses do on that stretch of the highway there. Another house he built on West Kangaroo Lake Road for Granberg. Did you say this was somebody's relative, Jumbo? No, that's another one. That was another one. I'm confused. He built some Gordon Lodge. Yeah, he built, I believe, 3 duplexes out there. So there's 2 of the duplexes that he built.
The blue cottages.
The blue cottages.
Blue bell, blue gentian.
Clear work there.
You might mention to me that my dad told us, the way he told us, a storm went through there, and there were all these big pine trees that got blown down, and they cut the lumber for those cottages.
Right. Yeah, a big storm blew through North Bay and knocked all those big pine trees down. They used a lot of that lumber they had milled. I don't know who milled the lumber and built those cottages with it. I'm assuming they might have even used it in the dining hall and top deck possibly. Just another duplex. They're all pretty simple buildings. You can just tell the different windows of yesteryear, how the side windows crank out in those little long skinny windows. And then he built the dining hall. And that is got a log facade on it. He didn't build many houses with logs on them, unlike his father, just how things changed. And then top deck. Top deck, I believe, was originally an old boathouse, and they added.
The boathouse was below.
Boathouse was below.
And the recreation room was where the top deck.
Oh, so there was a recreation room up there. Okay, so
There was.
he converted it to the top deck, which was like a fancy cocktail place to go. And I remember that back in the 70s. It was popular, and probably way before that. Another West Kangaroo Lake cottage. He built, what do I have here? 54, built to remodel 54 homes on or around Kangaroo Lake. 147 homes or structures on or around, in Bailey's Harbor. 22 on Ridges Road. And that includes everything, houses, garages. You'll see a couple other unique structures here in a little bit. Another simple structure. And you can see, as time progressed here, you can tell by, the siding. A lot of the siding was horizontal, now it's turning vertical. Here's a little garage he built. Ed Hughes, this was, I believe, next door to that checker house I showed you earlier. Ed Hughes' wife was sisters with Marguerite Zach, Kenny Zach, the Mason, his wife. This is their brother-in-law and sister's house. And then the boathouse out on Kangaroo Lake that the Andersons now own. Yep, that's on the island. And I don't really remember how he built this, if he took the lumber over there in the winter. My brother said that they did some remodeling there over the years, or did some other things, and they went out in the summer and took by boat. But the story goes that this was one of the last houses to make this book that he didn't have a picture of, and the guy that did it, Tank Shalom, was driving across the Kangaroo Lake Causeway one day, and he gets over to the east side and he sees Happy Landing there, and he sees those little rowboats. And he goes and knocks on the door. And he said, he explained the situation. He said, I'm going around, I'm taking pictures of houses that Pat Tischler built. I would like to use one of your boats. Oh, sure. So he said he started heading out there, and all of a sudden the wind picked up and he got a little wet. But he got the picture. This house looks the same. I don't know if he built the garage that's there, but that house pretty much looks the same. It's probably a different color now. You guys go by there every day.
Yeah, that's, Goss owns it. Yeah.
Dick Goss owns it.
Dick Goss owns it now.
There you go, one of the Gosses. I see Tom in the back. Everybody remember the Sands? Anybody remember the Sands Motel? Carly Jonas, Carl and Carol Jonas. He built the office. And I got a funny story about this too. He built their house. He did not build the motel, but my brother was telling me that the original motel was built in two pieces. It was built by Ben Olson from down the street. And somehow my dad joined the two structures. My dad got a phone call. I don't remember the exact way it went, but he got a phone call from Carly one day. He wanted him to come down there and check something out. You can see all these structures I made out of like cedar siding. It's like that reverse board and batten. And evidently there were some woodpeckers there that Carly didn't like. So he decided to take a, I don't know, was it 22? Took a gun and shot at him. He shot some holes in the siding, so my dad got a phone call to go down there and repair it. Anybody that knew Carly Jonas would sort of understand that one. He also built the Anklin Motel, which is very similar to that parent motel. It's, there's 4 rooms, and that's the view from the lakeside. It's actually got a beautiful view for such a simple motel now. Square rigger, thank you. I don't really know about this house. I know it's been redone, and I don't have my father to ask what the story is. It didn't always have that log siding on it. And I don't even know exactly where this house is. It's on Elm Point Road, but I couldn't tell you if it even looks like that. It may have been torn down. I know there's been some new houses built down there in recent years. Nels Geffert down Ridges Road. Anybody remember the Olson grocery store in Bailey's Harbor? One of the 2 grocery stores we used to have, now we have none. Lillian Olson's sister was Tilly, Lillian Tilly. There's a joke there, isn't there, Gary, somewhere? Lillian Tilly? Yeah, I remember working at Nelson's, Gary laughing about that. And Lily and Nels, he built the house for him. Joe Parent's original house, which is actually right next to that Parent Motel, Sunset Motel on 57. And it looks completely different than this now. Well, not completely, but similar. Tolsland House on County F, it's actually the Gray Farm house.
There was a house there, they tore the house down.
They tore the house down that was originally there.
And it's still standing.
That house is still standing. She still lives in it, yeah. This is a house that's still owned by the original person he built it for. I don't know when he built this. That was probably before. Were you working with him then? So it was probably in the 50s. He built a house and garage for him. Dr. Thomas, the dentist down in, he's well into his 80s. He's from Chicago area, and he still comes up here. He still actually practices dentistry. His nephew owns the little island. Actually, where's Maureen? Tim Thomas owns the little island out there. He's also a dentist.
Yeah, he's a dentist. He owns the island
Closest to Hickey's. Yes.
Is that where the lighthouse is?
No, not the lighthouse building, the other island closer, which you could walk to until this year. I don't know about this year. Can you walk out there? No?
They took out all they dredged out.
I think Lauren built that house out there. Did you build the house on the island?
Yeah.
That Tim owns? Because he told me he measured it or something that was perfectly square. I was talking to Tim one time. Can't always believe everything Tim says, though. Jack Jorns on County F. Jack's dad was a stonemason, Fred Jorns, Ferdinand Jorns, and then Jack and Kenny, Kenny was Jack's brother-in-law, were masons for years. Funny story about this house, never looked like that for many years. Many years it just had the black felt paper on it. Sort of like the shoemaker whose kids go barefoot. I think he was probably almost retired by the time he put that on there, Susie? Yeah.
We moved in 65, and we lived there probably 10 years before they finally put stone on, or more.
More stone on it, yeah. I don't think it was done for later than that. Late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's how it looks today. Very similar. Another house and garage that he built on West Kangaroo Lake, south of the beach road. And then I believe he built a couple structures on this property. The house, yeah. And then he built a garage and a guest house. And like a workshop too in that. Actually 4 structures. I gotta change my number, it's actually 55. Then there were a few houses that my dad really couldn't remember who he built them for. All I know is he knew where they are obviously because I took pictures, but there's 4 houses that he did not remember who he built them for, which surprised me because my dad remembered everything. But they're all around Kangaroo Lake, I believe. And obviously this house has been remodeled, didn't look anything like that, I'm sure. It looks like it's all been updated, the original structure. This one could be, fairly similar to the way it looked when it was built. And I apologize for this picture. It's the only picture I have of it. It's sort of a bad picture to begin with. There's a deer in the foreground there, though. Doesn't have antlers, though. Hagner House down in Frogtown. What's the story on that, Jumbo? He remodeled it.
He remodeled the whole inside.
Victor Hagner was the head waiter at Palmer House in Chicago. Yeah. And he brought a lot of gifts for my father over the years, too. It was funny because a lot of these people my dad built homes for became friends, and they would constantly stop in and just pop in. I'd be on a Saturday morning, I was in the car pulling the driveway. Be somebody coming to say hi or drop something off, a gift. And several of the people that he, built houses for were, friends many, many years. And there's another house next door. It's not the next slide, though. Art Kocher's house originally was by the gas station in Bailey's Harbor by 57 Depot, and then it was moved out further south of town on 57. Freddie Nelson moved it. His wife, ex-wife. Another story. This garage doesn't really look like this anymore. Just Anklin Park is right south of here, right next to Anklin Park. Originally, there was a very old building on the structure, probably 100 years old, that old garage, I'm guessing.
Pretty old.
Yeah. And being that, remember I told you nothing got torn down? My dad decided, well, I'm going to take it. So he hired Erwin Franklin to move it. And he moved it just north of town on some property my dad has on 57 and Q. And they took it up a bluff. And I don't know how they actually did it. My brother remembers them doing it.
Yeah.
Were you younger?
Yeah, as a kid, we cut. Well, if anybody knows where that snowmobile trail goes up the side of the hill, that's where we moved that house, or Irvin Franke moved it. It wasn't much of a building, but it's still up there.
Still standing barely.
Still got the property.
Another one that's still owned by the Anschutz family. One of your neighbors. Built a couple cottages for the Fishers. Happy Landing Resort. This building's been changed. I think it was originally a garage. And now there's living quarters above it, but he built the original. He did not do the, I don't know, Lauren, did you do that? No? Maybe Gene did. Gene did? There you go. See? Hank and Irene Meyer on County F. You working with him then when he built that house?
I was just
Just starting?
high school.
Senior in high school. So you probably helped on it.
Yeah, I did.
Clayton Megenberg, now you said that one was probably built
That was built before.
prior. And that one's right next to the Heald house that I showed earlier that my grandfather built because Pat's daughter, the Heald. Right across from where the new Ridges building's being built. Bill Betcher's house, sort of kitty corner from Leanne's house on Howard Street. The original house, which you can see here, this was an addition, was actually down on 57 on an empty lot across from the moccasin store. and they moved it up there. I'm assuming Erwin Franke moved that too. Erwin Franke. Moved it up there for Bill Betcher.
Harvey Fairchild lived in that house when it was across from Bombage.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I heard, okay. Yeah, so my uncle Harvey and Aunt Dorothy Fairchild lived there.
There also was a barn right there behind the house.
And there were rats in it. Your sister and cousin were playing there, and one of them picked up the rat. Thought it was a kitten. Because I remember the story our mother telling us, coming out of the barn. Yeah. So Bill is the car dealer in Sturgeon Bay, but his father, Bernie Betcher, also had the Ford dealership in Bailey's Harbor, where Gary Nelson's garage is. Another house down Ridges Road. Really don't know much about that. A lot of the houses have, stone chimneys. Sort of a unique thing for Door County. I just took this picture today, I apologize. I had another picture, but it was sort of out of focus. My brother's not gonna like the garbage can in the picture, but I didn't have time to move it. Marie Kozier, the original Art Kozier house, she lived in this for a number of years, and then she did not build it, but he built the original house though, for Altman.
The original house for somebody by the name I can't.
And I don't think he did the garage either. The garage was added on, because the original house cut the garage off, and I didn't like the way that picture looked. So I took a new picture. Mark Rispin's lived there for probably close to 20 years. I know. Looks like this house garage might have been for sale or something. There's a sign there. It is? I don't even know exactly where it is. The old jealousy windows on it.
That's gone.
Is the house is gone, the garage is still there?
They split the attorney on the North Island, or the dentist, owned those 3 lots,
Oh, Tim?
whomever he is. And
Tim
then
Thomas.
he split that lot and then sold it off of the island, so the story goes.
Oh, well, I'll ask them. I know. Don't really know where this house is. I'm assuming it's somewhere off of 57 on the east side of Kangaroo Lake.
That's right next to my place.
Oh, well, there you go.
Two bananas,
There you go. Tom's neighbor.
right next to Anschutz.
Oh, so it's just north of Anschutz or south?
Right.
North. Okay. Double E. Cedar shake siding. A lot of upkeep. This house is up on Linda Lane. It's sort of on the bluff. Built it for Judge Corcoran, who was from the Chicago area. House, I think, looks totally different. I remember it had a nice big screen porch. When it was built, there probably wasn't many trees on the bluff. You probably could see the lake in those days. Probably had a really nice view up there. Probably was the first house actually built on Linda Lane. This house is down in Chapel Lane. I don't know what it looks like now. It's not right, it's on the west side of Chapel Lane. It's up in the woods. Burkhart was he a fireman or something? Retired fireman. He used to drive truck many years for Bob Anderson. Remember that, Betty? Watson House up on Bluff Road. I believe he worked for Miller Brewing. I know my dad had some beer steins and stuff that said Miller on them, so I'm assuming that's where they came from. My brother said he didn't build this house. He remodeled it or something. And it looks totally different now. The people that own it this is actually living space. They added on. They built another big 3-car garage over to the right. Shane garage, he added on to it. Originally, the old garage was over here. That garage is really old. It's got a little outhouse or something on one door here, built into the garage, which is still there. Right, Sarah? My sister-in-law and brother-in-law own it. This house is on Chapel, or on Frogtown. The original house was there, and they actually raised the roof and put a second story on it. In the early 70s, was that? Late 60s? Probably late 60s.
Build the house.
Didn't build the house.
He cut the roof off at the plate line, and then we put another 8-foot walls and another addition up.
And the lady that owned this house was sisters with the Hagner house right next door, right? They're from some European, Russian?
They were
Russian,
Russian.
yeah. Delzell House down on Chapel Lane. Yeah, that's on the lake. Or not on beach, on Ridges Road, I'm sorry, I said Chapel Lane, Ridges Road. Anderson House, Neil Anderson, plumber. It's now owned by Alexander's. House looks way different now. They excavated, they have a walkout basement, they have a big deck. It's a nice house. In the front of the house, they got a couple pillars. And you can sort of see the block foundation that was used for many years. And then this house is right next door, and that no longer has, I don't think that has the geese on it anymore. Oswald Collins, Oswald and Gertie. Those houses were, right next to each other, very similar ranch houses. John Brand's house, that was down on 57, where across from Lutheran Church, where Joe Parent built the 3 houses. John Brand Sr. actually lived there. I remember my dad built this house. I was pretty little, but there was an old house that John Brand Sr. lived in right out by the road. And they built this house behind, had a walkout basement. And after that house was built for Junior, then they tore down the original house. And then this house was actually moved south of town on 57. So it's still there. Pape House and Garage down on, it's called Sand Dune Shores. If you go south of town about 4 miles where the Heidelberg Curve, we used to call it, turns. If you go to the left, it's a private drive down there. The sand dunes, yeah, the Big Sandy. Yeah, Big Sandy, yeah. There's a beautiful sand beach out there. He was an undertaker from the south suburbs of Chicago. And he is another one that used to stop by the house all the time. No. You need a special permit to cross state lines with that. Here's a repeat customer. He built the original simple house for them. They're on, it's called Bauer Dam Road. It's down by the dam, just a couple houses from the dam on the south end of Kangaroo Lake off 57. And then he built a newer house for him. And then this next house is actually right next door to the north. Gene Bauer. Gene and Georgine Bauer, and they had a little guest cottage. I spent many summers there. Very good friends. I spent many summers with their son, Jeff, learned how to water ski down in Kangaroo Lake. There you go, Maureen.
Oh, yeah.
She's in the audience, the original owner.
And it's a beauty.
House and garage. And how's the story go? Talked you into raising the foundation 2 blocks?
Yeah, we came out and the foundation was sitting there. The foundation had been scraped for the church in town. Maginot had owned it and took all the dirt. And so it was sitting on a huge slab of limestone, or limestone, I guess, or whatever it is. And it was up real high, it had to be 6 feet high. And we asked him why he hadn't done more, and he said, I'm going up 2 more blocks on this foundation. And that's what saved us in '87. We didn't have any water in the house at all.
When the lake was up at its highest level?
And our neighbors were all under with water in the houses.
You had a house on the end of the road there. It's really
all of it was
underwater.
under. So,
I can remember when we were building that house, you came up, we just started, and you were so excited you brought a dozen roses for my dad.
The only roses he ever got in his life, probably.
I tried, it was just so beautiful to see.
You want to share your story now or later?
Well, the garage was built a couple of years later, and my husband paid him, and a oh, maybe 3 Sundays later, this big, beautiful, yellow Cadillac sedan
It was a Lincoln.
pulled, oh, was a Lincoln?
Lincoln Compact.
Well, it was gorgeous, and it pulled in the driveway. And we ran out to see who, we didn't know anybody with a Lincoln. And he got out, and Elsie got out, and he came around and he said, I'd like you to see my garage. Because we had paid him.
Egan House on Ridges Road. Matt, you and your dad, I think, were working down there later years. We're doing some repairs, remodeling, water damage. Yeah, I think it's still owned by them. Another West Kangaroo Lake garage and workshop he built. Is that on just south of the beach road? Yeah. This house is sort of behind the Anklem Cottage, not Anklem, Collins Cottages on Severn Street, just behind, sort of behind the Lutheran Church. Jim Holland. The house hasn't changed much over the years other than the skylights she put in there, the current owner. And then the next house to the north, they built as well. They were friends. I believe they were both from Ohio. Holland and Hawley. A lot of the houses you can see, they got the stone on it, which I think in Door County is just so unique and original. I can't understand it. I see brick on houses up here. I just can't understand it. James Marshall, I believe they're relatives of, were they relatives of the Strombergs?
Yeah.
She was a Stromberg? Yeah. And this house is right next door. Ethel Melanius, house and garage, and she had a workshop. Workshop full of stuff. And my dad, when she was trying to clean house, would always be coming home with more stuff from her. She wanted to get rid of it, and he was never one to say no. A lot of stuff I had to get rid of. This house is probably built, I'm guessing, in the 70s, looking at the architecture. 1972. Just past where Spikehorn used to be. They actually used to camp at Spikehorn, and then they...
That's right. Set back.
Yep. This house is just north of Beach Road on Kangaroo Lake, right next to the beach. He built that house for Don Dean. Don must have owned a bunch of property there. Don and Lois Dean. Never knew what he did because he always seemed to be very well off and never looked like he worked. No. We actually do work. He built this house and then he sold it to someone, I can't remember their name, but they owned it for a number of years. Actually, another dentist, right. Well, he can only afford 1/3 of the property, that's why. He couldn't afford the whole thing. The other guy owned the whole thing. And then he had another lot in between, which is the house after this I'm going to show you, but then he built this house in Guest Cottage. And then this house in between was another dentist.
He was supposedly a minister.
Yeah, he was a minister.
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah, some minister.
House, and then he sold it to someone, I can't remember their name, but they owned it for a number of years. Actually,
He sold it to was a dentist.
another dentist, right. Well, he can only afford 1/3 of the property, that's why. He couldn't afford the whole thing. The other guy owned the whole thing. And then he had another lot in between, which is the house after this I'm going to show you, but then he built this house in Guest Cottage. And then this house in between was another dentist.
He was supposedly a minister.
Yeah, he was a minister.
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah, some minister. But the guy that bought the house was
Yeah, Ralph and, I forget her name, Rosemary Schneider. They were actually very good friends of my parents.
that guy was a dentist.
He was a dentist in Burlington, yes he was, yes he was. Probably the reason I became a dentist because I spent so many hours with him fishing as a kid. Actually, he was the reason I became a dentist. He inspired me. I'm the only one in our family that didn't go into building houses. Staunton House, owned by Mary Moran. The guest house is torn down, and when the Cecils bought it, they built it's a rental house for sale, big red house. It's in its place.
That guy there,
Oh yeah, funny story. Martin Staunton was an immigrant, I believe from Austria. Sweden. And he invented the high-speed dental drill, which he later sold to Midwest, and I use Midwest handpieces now. Yeah, and I used to mow his lawn, and where Bill Cecil's big Victorian house that's for sale in the log cabin used to be his big field. And it would take me hours to mow that, even with a riding lawnmower. And whenever I would go down there, it usually was several days to mow the lawn because it was the house and down across the street. He would always take me into his little workshop. In this next picture here, he had a garage, and then the front of the garage was garage space, but he had a nice, beautiful workshop with all kinds of metal working tools, metal lathes and whatnot. And he was always showing me the latest thing. And at that point, he was already retired, but they would always, contact him, and he would do consulting for him. And he had a gold-plated dental handpiece in his.
Gold-plated, high-speed, what do they call them, drills that
Yeah.
they use on
I remember seeing that. And this really isn't a guest house. It's sort of like a little cocktail house. I couldn't figure out what to exactly call it. Party house. Well, pretty hard. You'd have to have a limited guest number for that. It's pretty small. It's probably about 10 by 10 tops, 8 by 10. I believe this one is on West Kangaroo Lake, but I don't really know where it is. Do we ever figure out where it was? No? There you go, Terry. Built this house for the Rutherfords, and it was debatable whether it was 69 or 70, right?
69. Jimmy said 69, he roofed it.
69, you roofed it, okay, because you used to golf with Jimmy, and then you guys remodeled in 2006. So there were reportedly some UFO sightings from the previous owner. If you Google UFO sightings in Door County, her name will come up.
Across the street.
That house is in here too, across the street. Hot's house in West Kangaroo Lake. It's over on Eggers Point, Eggers Drive, is it? And this is something that when Mr. Tank Shullum took my dad out and did, to these houses, people would come out, and the women would come out and give my dad a big hug, and they'd stand there talking, and here's my dad talking to the owners. And this one, I believe, is right there, too, in Eggers Point.
He
Didn't build it.
He added an addition on.
It is a flat-roofed house, right?
Yes.
Flat-roofed house, you built the addition, and probably Kenny probably did the stone fireplace, Kenny Zach. Now, remember I said structures. Here's a unique structure that somebody wanted, Ed Doyle wanted on West Kangaroo Lake Road. Well, I think we know what it is. But the roof line matches the roof line in that part of the house.
He did build that out. Alongside.
And he made the outhouse match it. Tony Turk, West Kangaroo Lake. Tony had the machine shop. He was a retired machinist from Elm Grove. And he built that machine shop, which is now Harbor Marine out on F. And Tony built a lot of things. And he built them out of one thing only, pretty much, stainless steel. Everything was made out of stainless steel. Heavier than heck and probably cost $1 million.
He also had a workshop across.
He did. He had another workshop across the street, but it was a metal building. It wasn't?
He built the first boat ramp on Kangaroo Lake.
Tony Turk did build the first boat ramp, yes. And I think my dad probably helped him put it in. Then around 1972,
They were built in 66 or 67.
72.
They were right after ours, and ours was 66.
That house was built when I was first married in 1969.
69. They built two houses. Ed Vogel was the head brewmaster for Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis. And he had my dad build the two houses down on Ridges Road there. And they look very similar to the way they were built. Funny story was he was building these houses, and then, what did you think, it took like a couple years? Took a couple years, a year and a half.
It took about a year to build one.
Yeah, so 2 years to build both.
Building one, and he wanted one just like it across.
Across on the other side of the water.
So we built another.
He built a bridge across. There's a little creek that used to run through there, and it actually has water.
It was all dug out, the water was nice and high.
Yeah, it was all dug out, and they put, didn't they put like cement in there?
And I believe that fellow right over there is the guy that owns it. And I
There you go.
just tell about him. I'm the guy that met, I was on my motorcycle and you pulled up on a motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked you where you lived and you were explaining to me down on Rich's Road and on the corner there, and I said, my father and brother and I built that house. And you said to me, well, your name is Fisker. I said, no, it's Tischler.
He's got the correct spelling now tonight, so. And there's the guest house, which I actually thought was sort of unique too. It had a little putting green out there. And that's actually was sold shortly after that. They sold it within 8-10 years.
For his son, but his
Son never really wanted it. So like 6-8 years later, he sold it, and the same family still owns it. They bought it in the 70s. Yeah. Oh, story. So a year goes by, and my dad, like he did every morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, probably about 6:58, knowing my father, he picked up the phone and called Lampert's and Lumberyard in Sister Bay and placed an order for some lumber, and then he got in the car like he did every morning, talked to Barkey, got in the truck every morning, drove up there and picked it up. Didn't want to leave a lot of extra wood on the work site. Didn't want a mess, and he didn't want people taking it or whatever. And he's in there one morning, and I don't know if it was Barkey or Bill Bastian said, did you see the latest Pella brochure? And in that Pella brochure was pictures from these houses that he built. He didn't even know they were in there. And we used to have a copy of that. I cannot find it. House had all Pella windows, yeah. So it was in their one of their brochures. Actually, booklets. House on Kangaroo Lake, I just took this the other day. I apologize for the stuff growing on the roof. It was a house that they added onto and remodeled for Harry DeVork. It was a Wausau house. Remember I told you there was stuff growing on the roof? I wasn't kidding. Harry was a retired police officer from Oak Park, Illinois. And they moved out to Arizona, and my parents used to go out there many years and visit him. They were good friends. All right. This house is down at the end of West Kangaroo Lake Road on the lake. And that's been all remodeled too since they built it. Did it have that stucco siding you put on there? So I mean, that was one of the only houses you guys built like that.
Yeah.
Very unique.
That was before mine too.
That was his favorite.
That house originally, when my dad built it, they had a flat roof on it. And then the people sold it, and another couple bought it. We put a roof on and dormer additions on it.
And it's been remodeled since then too.
Yeah.
Current owner.
It's a big house now.
Post house, it's on West Kangaroo Lake Road. It's not actually on the lake. Did you say Wilmer lives in this house now? Or is it Mary Beth?
His daughter, yeah.
Mary Beth lives there, I think. Yeah. And this was William Post. He was the son-in-law of that Dr. Schneider, the dentist down the street. Built this house for another dentist, happened to be my in-laws. Periodontist. Jim and Matt built the garage, though, in later years. And that house was added on to, too. Originally, it was cut out here. I think this was the porch, and then they turned that into a dining room, and then they made this a porch. And then Matt actually remodeled this a few years ago because it needed some work done because there was a lot of water damage that had been going on. So he actually remodeled this whole area. It looks beautiful inside. And that's right across from the UFO house that the Goods live in. This house is down Ridges Road. It's next to it's not next to Hidden Brook. It's 2 houses from Hidden Brook. And it's not in his family anymore. What did he used to do, Jumbo? Samsonite chairs or something?
I don't know, some corporate officer.
Yeah, from Green Bay.
It's still in his family.
Is it his family? Different last name, though. Maybe a daughter?
Fortune, Sarah Fortune.
Yeah, because I looked up in the Door County Property website, and it was not in the name of Hendrickson. I don't know.
This is granddaughter, actually.
I
Granddaughter.
was gonna say, I think it's a relation.
Which a lot of the houses are still in the family. This house you guys built out on Pine Drive, past private road past Gordon Lodge. And there's another one in here too that they built out on Pine Drive. West Kangaroo Lake Road. Dr. Banker was a urologist from. He was a urologist. He was in the big bucks. Urologist in Manitowoc. When did you guys build this? In the 70s?
Probably.
Yeah. They were working on it. This is long before the days of cell phones. My dad and two brothers, Jim and Jumbo, were working on it. My dad was a big guy. He was about my size, 6'1", 220 pounds. Jumbo's smaller. Jimmy was even smaller. And my dad passed out on the job. So what did they do? They got him into the work truck, drove him home, called an ambulance. Turned out he was having kidney stones. He later made an appointment with the client he was building a house for that. And Dr. Banker passed out upstairs and had to take him down. Oh, that's right.
Plumbing there between the two Andrews boys, my brother and I, we carried him down the steps. In the truck.
And the steps probably weren't done then. They were probably just roughed in. This house is down on Frogtown Road. Big long driveway that goes up. The driveway in this picture was gravel, but it's now paved. Sort of hidden back in there. Very unique roof lines and architecture. Could never understand these garage doors, though. You want to explain that? Those cutouts in those garage doors? I hate those. I absolutely hate those darn things. Because they're on my garage. This is on the corner of Beach Road and Larquist Road. He was the son of Dr. Schneider that he built the house for just down the street on Beach Road and West Kangaroo Lake. He was a podiatrist, and he had the nickname Toe Jam. He practiced in Sturgeon Bay. This house still looks pretty much the same. That was built probably late 70s, early 80s, down on Ridges Road. It was on a slab. Did that have radiant heat in it? No. But it was on a slab. I remember when it was constructed with that slab, it was no crawl space or basement. Anybody know where this house is? You probably go by it every day. Just don't see it. It's behind Nathan Nichols, yep. I didn't realize where it was. I looked at this picture a million times, and I asked my brother, I said, where is this on 57? He goes, you know where it is. It's behind the furniture store. I remember when it was built, I just didn't remember where it was. Well, it's behind Nathan Nichols. Yeah, two beautiful stone fireplaces. Recognize this garage mark? Your mother's property down in Sumac? This Booze Point Road, it's now owned by your mom, Matt, right? And they remodeled it. It looks nothing like this anymore. This is on Cana Cove Road go out to Cane Island, and then you take a left. Walk out basement. I wonder if they had any water with that flooding we had a couple weeks ago. Well, yeah, I know, but that low basement. Longhouse. He was a partner of your father's, Sarah.
That's right.
One of the Hewitt partners. Beach Road, Kangaroo Lake Beach Road. At the end of Kangaroo Lake Beach Road, the house just to the south. This house here is out on Pine Drive. It's a very unique house. It's not square, no right angles. So all these curves.
It's like if you take two horseshoes and kind of put.
I've got a diagram picture of it up here.
And I remember my dad saying, there were no trusses on that roof. Every rafter was different. There were 428 common rafters. And no two of them were alike. It was an amazing house.
And they had radiant heat. How much wiring was in the floor for the radiant heat?
Action Electric put the heat in. I remember the heat. There was over 4 miles of wire under this.
A lot of stone on the floors inside.
Yeah, a lot of flagstone.
Flagstone floors in the
And
house.
parquet floors.
And parquet floors. Very unique house.
I think a lot of the owners.
It actually, the following year, made the cover of Wisconsin Architect magazine.
Magazine over there, Wisconsin Architect magazine, and that house was on the
It was on the cover, and then I've got a couple other pictures inside. And the next picture, you'll be able to see how the shape of the house is. But you can see all the rafters and the round curves and the parquet floors. It's very unique.
Was that one of the first built down there on Pine?
No, that other house was built before.
house in the 80s.
It was built in the 80s. It was one of the last houses that he built.
The guy retired.
He retired, moved up here, and had
He
it.
was here a year and he got killed in a car accident going to get the newspaper.
He was going to Sister Bay to get the newspaper, and
Oh.
She was
Got
just
killed.
up here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I talked to her, and she comes up quite frequently.
does she?
They sold the house.
They sold. I met the lady that owns it a couple years ago.
Stupia, Joyce Stupia,
Mhm.
Stupid. Really nice people.
with wonderful people.
There's the shape of the house. And there wasn't much drywall in there, but I remember my brother Jim telling me how they bent the drywall. They had to like make slits on the back of it like every inch just so they could bend it around those curves.
It was amazing.
And there you can see the flagstone in like the hallways. That's the garage.
He was
That's what it was, Johnson Controls. I knew this. I knew his head of something.
very nice people.
And that's from that magazine too, just some pictures during that winter. Garage is here. Very unique structure though. I remember going out there and looking at that when they were building. I was in dental school at the time and I was just amazed.
That's a view from the front of the house.
This is out by the water. I think we're standing down by the water looking up at the house. And this is from the road looking in.
Yeah, I remember when my dad laid the foundation of the footings, and to this day, I don't know how he figured it out. He didn't have but a high school education, but he was a very smart man. If my brother and I would have figured it out, we'd still be out there.
You'd still be out there. Jimmy's long gone. He exited 5 years ago. He's playing golf somewhere. So now I just have a few other houses that he built there in Bailey's Harbor. I sort of limited it to Bailey's Harbor being it's the Bailey's Harbor Historical Society, but I thought I would be remiss if I didn't show some of these other unique houses that he built. This one's down in Cottage Row for the Kunzelmans.
My former husband's aunt was married to Leroy Kunzelman.
There you go.
Furniture
Remember
business?
being-
Furniture business down in
Yes.
Milwaukee. Was it Kunzelman Esser?
Kunzelman Esser. Yes, Vanjie Kunzelman was her name, and we used to visit her. That's
Claire's a cousin.
somewhere down the line.
He built the original Fiesta restaurant, which has actually been added on to a million times, but he built it for my mom's brother, Itzy, Elvin, and Janet Krause.
What was it? Oh, it was a Fiesta.
Well, I believe when they built it was the Fiesta, and then it was a million other things. It's on the curve, right across from the auditorium. Now it's a Arroyo Bay Grill.
Oh, that, yeah, Mexican.
Arroyo means creek in Mexican. Creek Bay Grill. My brother doesn't remember this, but I thought it was so unique with the gambrel roof. It's a garage, and they had living quarters up above it, somewhere in Ephraim in North Orchard.
I don't remember that. I was gone there for a couple of years.
He came back, though. Here's a unique structure. There was an old, what was it, a water tower? Wink, Wink Larson had that up at his orchard, which is now part of Sequist Orchards on 42, just as you're coming into Ellison Bay. Across from Clay Bay Pottery.
Yeah, it was like a silo. And this Winky Larson was bound to determine my dad was gonna put a building on top of that silo. My dad didn't want to do it. He said the only way he would do it is if he built the floor, laid everything out on the ground, built a subfloor on the ground, and get a crane to lift it up there. And Winky was bound determined, he said that won't work. My dad said, well, he wouldn't do it any other way. So he convinced Winky to let him build a subfloor, and we got Johnny Fitzgerald to lift the subfloor up on top of that silo, and then from there on, we just built the wall.
And there was a deck up top. There was like a trap door. Did you say to get up there? I remember when you guys built that. There was, this was built in later years. That wasn't part of it. There was a door here, and then there was like a first floor, second floor where the bedroom was. First floor might have been bathroom.
We cut a doorway.
Cut a door through here, yeah. And then this was added later years by like Tom Birmingham. Spiral staircase going up. Wink Larson had the ski hill, and he was notorious for the goats on the roof of Sister Bay, and everybody knows the rest of the story there. He and my father used to sort of go back and forth too. He was sort of.
What's actually up there then? Living quarters?
It was just one.
Mitch lived there for a while.
Big room.
One room. It was his bachelor
I
pad.
think it was only 12 feet across that side.
Yeah, it wasn't big. Mitch owns on deck.
Yeah, had one heck of a view up on top when you go through.
He's got a better view where he lives now. Gibraltar Bluff Road. He's got a much better view. Oscar Bolt built his original house on North Cortland Garage. Oscar came to my dad and said, you know, I want you to build a house. My dad said, Oscar, you've got this big construction business. You're world famous. You build all these big structures all over the world. Why do you want me to build a house? He said, I've never built a house. I've heard you're the best. I want you to do it. So, and Oscar's still alive. How old is he?
Oscar's 94 years old. I talked to him about a week ago at the funeral. If most of you know about the Ridges building down there, he's involved. He's not building it. He's a supervisor.
GC.
He had a very big construction company. He worked all over the world. He built bridges, skyscrapers, but he never built a house.
This house you built in the probably around 1980, 83, 85. Dr. Sargent, that's the funeral he was at. Dr. Sargent was an orthopedic surgeon, just recently passed away down in Appleton. He retired up here, and he retired. My dad built the original house and brothers, and then he added on to it, and Jumbo helped with that. The house, tell them about the living room floor. It's like the keel of a boat.
It's laid out like the keel of a boat. It's all red
Cherry.
hardwood.
Isn't there a piece of maple going down the middle?
One piece of maple down the middle.
And then the keel going out from it?
It was laid out there.
So he was an orthopedic surgeon. Who do you think did my dad's 2 knee replacements? Very nice guy. He was a wonderful man, Dr. Sargent. And this house here is where I've got the pictures over there. This is his brother, Robert Sargent.
That house there was probably the biggest and most elaborate house that my father ever built. That house right there. It was just amazing the view that guy's got in that house.
And she still owns the house.
She still owns the house.
That was built within a couple years after that big fireplace that Kenny Zock
I don't know
built.
how many square feet it was, but it was a big.
And it's got geothermal heating. It's probably one of the first houses up here that had geothermal heating. It runs 24 hours a day. There's the view from the deck.
Unbelievable view. The deck hangs out from the house.
It's right next door to the other structure, and when those two
Cantilevered out from the house.
cantilevered out.
But it's hanging out over the.
I mean, there's ground underneath it, but it's like you're hanging off the edge of the bluff. When those two houses are built, there were hardly any houses down Gibraltar Bluff. Now there's houses all along there. I remember years ago, 25 years ago, going along the water and looking up, and those are some of the only houses there. Now there's all over there's houses there. Egan House in Sister Bay. Your dad sort of inherited that one, Matt. He was up there all the time. She used to call him, Annie used to call him up.
Put that huge addition on the right picture.
Jimmy did that.
Yeah.
That's that.
This here?
No, on the left side of the picture there, yeah, the big deck and the,
Matt, you worked on that.
yeah. Built the garage, house in high school.
They no longer own it. They actually live down on Clark's Lake. But I was told that your father got called many times over there by her brother. Anything wrong, anything she needed, she always called Jimmy up, and he was there. One of my favorite houses, they built this house, and this is the house that's in that book over there. It's chronological, the pictures are all chronological when it was built. For Gretchen and John Maring, who still live up here. They don't own the house anymore. They moved to a townhouse up in Ellison Bay. Beautiful house on Settlement and Town Line Road approximately. I love this room here. It's got windows all the way around. It's got the stone on the bottom. Faces east though. And here's the last house my dad built. The original house was a log house. It's down North Shore Road in Ephraim, and it was right here. And this is the gentleman, Mr. Shalom, Tank Shalom, that helped my dad do these pictures for this book. And then they built this big addition on it.
That addition that's a log home. And we got the logs from a place in Montana. They were dead standing, dead lodgepole pine. They were 100-year-old dead trees standing. And they shipped them up on a big semi, big flatbed.
And he always kidded my father that his is the last house because my dad had to build a log house as the last house. And I just thought this is a little interesting thing he put on the back of the book of all the pictures he gave for my dad. How you see all these clients come out and how they admired him. And right here, your career has enriched the lives of many, and yet your wealth is the greatest of all, a good name, a legend for all time. Because when they were driving around, my dad would say, he said, Tank, I don't understand how all these people can afford these houses. They're not their primary houses. They're second homes for them. Some of them have 3 houses. I just don't understand it. So that's why he put that little thing in there. Your wealth is the greatest of all time.
Most of those pictures that Timmy showed tonight were just Bailey's Harbor homes, but he built a lot of them that as far as north as Gills Rock, as far as
North Point.
North Point. As far
Yep.
as we can figure out, there were like
227.
200.
227 houses or remodels. As far south as Cave Point and just slightly south of Jackson.
Built one in, south of Murphy Park.
Yeah, well, just south of Murphy Park, I was going to say, but that's approximately straight west of Cave Point. And actually, that house she built out of Cave Point, I see she just passed away the other day. There's a picture of our dad. That was the only tool you needed, that and that. Square pencil, rectangular pencil, and the folding ruler. Didn't trust those tape measures. They had that little measurement on there that changed. He always had a folding ruler. And he always wore those overalls. In the summer, he wore the t-shirt. In the winter, he wore a chambray shirt over the top. And this is when they were building the Maring house. I think he's in the audience tonight. Well, at least you don't have the beard anymore. You recognize that guy, Matt? Your dad, Jim?
That's our younger brother who passed away.
Jim took over after my dad retired in like 1990, and then he built some homes. Did a lot of remodeling, though. A lot of remodeling. It was one of the first things he built for Mark Merrill back there, his garage and his house. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the house is a different color than the garage, because I took these pictures, and Gary said, you got to go back there and take a picture. They're painting it. Adam's up there painting it. Well, I go up there and take a picture. That's actually Gary, not just Adam. That's Gary's leg there you see in the picture, so I got you. That's not Fred Traven. But now Mark told me the garage looks the same too, so. And then Jim built a little shed here for that, Roy Hall, but it actually was a Dalzell house. And then the last house I have, this was Tony Paul's old house. Tony Paul was the postmaster for many years, Bailey's Harbor postmaster. My dad built the original house. And Jimmy was set to do a remodel for Richie and Sandy Weisgerber, and he passed away, and Matt took on that job, him and his buddy. And I think it turned out really nice. They tore the original garage off. I think it had a one-car garage. I think the original building was about that long. They had a one-car garage. You tore that off, put a two-car garage, added on to the east.
That's right across the road from the town.
Right across from Town Hall. And you can't see, but there's a little sign there that says for rent.
That was built for Elton Bakes.
Elton Bakes?
Originally, yeah.
Orby Bakes.
No, I think Elton.
Elton. Because Orby lived next to the grocery store there for years. After my dad passed away, I was sitting at his desk going through his stuff, and he had a desk blotter, and I lifted up the desk blotter, and underneath there he had a little note about what he wanted on his tombstone. That's what he wanted. He really loved his work. He really had a hard time retiring. Thank you.
I saw your dad, because I used to walk him back to the Catholic Church. And Pat was sitting by the Charlie Collins cottages there.
Yeah.
And I just stopped and I said, well, how are you, Pat? And he said, he said, retirement is sometimes really hard. And I said, yeah, but you've worked so hard all these years. And I said, look at here, you can sit and look at what you've done. He said, he said, sometimes I just like to do that. I just like to sit and look what I did in my life. And I said, yep. And I said, that's the greatest honor of all, to be able to look at what you've done and think, hey, I did that. So that was my last memory of your dad. And I think it was
Nice memory.
Yeah.